Welcome back to Wrestling with Horror. Today we're going to continue this little mini series that we've kind of been going on where we review the original film and some of the bigger horror franchises. That being said, today we're going to talk about my favorite, Halloween. So, I know I've talked about Halloween quite a bit over the last month or so, especially through October. I've talked about the new film, I've ranked the franchise, I've talked about things that I liked, and if you've watched any of my videos pertaining to Halloween, you know that the original Halloween is my favorite horror movie of all time, and by far my favorite in the series. But I've never really done a review and given you my full thoughts on the original film. So that's what I want to do today. Before we get going on that, I just want to say, if you're not already subscribed, please hit that subscribe button. My goal is to hit 150 subscribers by the end of the year. I think that's very attainable, and I would appreciate any help that I can get in reaching that goal. So if you haven't subscribed, please hit that subscribe button, turn your notifications on so you never miss a video. And also, if you're interested in any merchandise of mine, check out prowrestlingtees.com/AndrewDreamer, and you can get several different t-shirt variations. I would appreciate any support. It means the world to me, those of you who have already done that. Halloween was released in 1978. It was written and directed by John Carpenter. The movie was produced by Carpenter along with his production partner, and at the time his girlfriend Deborah Hill. Now, there are a lot of people who came together to get this movie made. It was made on a very, very small budget. It was a very independent film for the time, but it did get distribution. But really, I just want to talk about the substance of the film. The production side of it, I don't necessarily care as much about right now. To an extent, anyway. I want to talk about the mask and the feel of the movie a little bit. But for the main part, I just want to talk about the substance of the film, the plot, the writing, that kind of thing. So, obviously, this film is the first time that we ever see the character of Michael Myers. And this character has become such an iconic horror villain, an iconic slasher villain. On Halloween night in 1963, young Michael Myers was left home with his older sister Judith. She was supposed to take him trick-or-treating. Instead, she decided to bring her boyfriend over. And, well, we all know what happened. Michael finds a knife. He goes upstairs, puts his clown mask on, and he goes in there and brutally murders his older sister. Now, after this, he spends the next 15 years locked up in Smith's Grove Sanitarium under the care of Dr. Samuel Loomis. Now, Dr. Loomis, he spends 7 years trying to reach him, and the next 8 trying to keep him locked up because he realized what was living behind that boy's eyes was purely and simply evil. And that's how Michael is described through most of this film. He is just evil. He's not a man, as Dr. Loomis says. This is no man. He's evil. And the point of the whole character in this is that we don't know what drives him. We don't know what his motive is, that there is no motive. And that's one of the great things about this film. And something that I kind of have an issue with going forward is that they try to attribute motive to everything that Michael does. I don't think Michael needs that motive. I think Michael is best and scariest and strongest when there is no motive, when he's just randomly going to these places. He's back in his hometown and he's randomly killing these babysitters. 15 years after he is locked up, on the day before Halloween, he decides that it's time for him to escape. So he escapes, he steals the Smith's Grove car, and he goes back to his hometown of Haddonfield. But on the way, he makes one little pit stop, killing a mechanic and taking his overalls, which is where the iconic jumpsuit comes from. Now, once he arrives in Haddonfield, he goes to a hardware store, he steals a knife, some rope, a Halloween mask, and there's where his mask comes from. Now, here's where I'm going to take a break and talk about the production just a little bit. Now, we all know what this mask is. It is a Captain Kirk mask from Star Trek that they painted white, they teased the hair out, widened the eyes a little bit, and it became one of the most iconic masks of all time. Everybody knows what Michael Myers' mask looked like when you see it. And it came from one of the most simple, cheap ways of making an original mask. Where Michael first begins to stalk his prey, which in this film is Laurie Strode, played by Jamie Lee Curtis in her first major role. She is dropping a key off at the old Myers house that her father is trying to sell. Michael sees her, and thus begins the chase, the hunt, so to speak. He follows her to school, where he stands outside by the car watching her while she's in class, giving us that iconic shot of him standing outside, which is actually reused in several different sequels in this franchise. From there, Halloween commences. Laurie goes to babysit Tommy Doyle. Her friend Annie goes to babysit Lindsay Wallace. Her other friends are basically just there to sleep with each other. And so what ends up happening is Annie brings Lindsay over to Laurie so she can watch her and go meet up with her own boyfriend. Of course, she never makes it there because Michael hides in the backseat of her car and kills her. Her other friend is also killed in Lindsay's house while they are upstairs in Lindsay's parents' room having sex for some reason. I don't understand why they think that's okay or normal, or why that there's a pumpkin sitting next to the bed. That's a little strange to me. However, that's beside the point. Michael, in these scenes where we see that Michael kind of almost has a sense of humor when he puts the sheet on after he kills Bob, which is also one of the most iconic kills in the entire franchise, when he picks Bob up by the throat and he stabs him and hangs him on the wall. You get that iconic head tilt from Michael that we've seen so many times. Then he puts the bed sheet over his head. He puts Bob's glasses on, dresses up like a ghost so he can go upstairs. This is where we learn that Michael basically has a bit of a sense of humor. He's almost got like a childlike mind, which is where he's kind of stuck in that childlike state that he's in. So after a while, Laurie starts getting worried about her friends. She decides to go back over to Lindsay's house to see if her friends are still there. Once she arrives, she goes upstairs and she finds her friend's dead body laying in the bed with the gravestone of Judith Myers sitting on the bed, and Michael has posed her there. And then he starts finding all the other bodies. He finds Annie, he finds Bob, and that's when she is now hysterical and she's crying. And here's where we get Michael emerging from the shadows in the most terrifying way that you can possibly imagine. She falls over the stairs, and then he starts chasing her back across the road to the Doyle house. She gets inside, realizes that the window is open, the phones are dead, and she grabs her sewing needle and she stabs Michael right in the neck. Laurie then goes upstairs to get the kids and tell them that she killed the boogeyman, where Tommy then says, "You can't kill the boogeyman," right as Michael comes up the stairs. Then, once again, she tells them to hide. She goes and she hides in a closet herself. And at this point, Michael finds her. He starts breaking in the closet. She gets a clothes hanger. She stabs him in the eye. And then she picks up his knife and stabs him in the chest. Once again, wrongly thinking that she has defeated the boogeyman and killed him once and for all. She tells the kids to run outside, go get help. And then we get that iconic moment of Michael sitting up. It's then where she demasks Michael, and basically she saves herself by doing this, because she allows just enough time for Dr. Loomis to show up and to shoot Michael 6 times. Michael falls off the balcony, and we all know what happens. Loomis looks over the balcony edge and then sees that Michael has gone. He has disappeared. He is no longer there. We get that breathing, and we get the different shots from the sets that we've seen, and that's basically saying that evil can be anywhere. And that's the film. But what I really want to talk about is how John Carpenter's direction and the way he shot this film, Dean Cundy as the cinematographer, the way that they did this, it was what made this film so good. It made it so scary at the time, and in a lot of ways it's still very terrifying. But the way that they shoot Michael, it's like you're constantly searching the frame to see if he's there. And if you're really, really looking, every time you watch the film, you might even find another spot where you didn't realize that he was actually in the shot. I've done that several times myself, and I've seen this movie hundreds of times probably. So I really enjoy that aspect of having to search for him, to search for the shape within the film. And I also think that this film is actually very well written for the time, for the budget that it had. I think John Carpenter does a fantastic job with the way he wrote this movie. Like, the whole point of this is that this could take place anywhere. Haddonfield is not really meant to be a specific location. Yes, it's in Illinois, but there is a lot of differing opinion on where Haddonfield's actually located within the state, because it's meant to be anywhere. This could happen in any small town, and evil can be anybody. Michael Myers just happens to be the vessel of evil that we get in this film. And of course, I can't go this video without talking about John Carpenter's score. Little fun fact about the score for this film. When the film was screened, there was no music in it. There was nothing. And the producers didn't like it. They thought it wasn't scary. Then John Carpenter went back and re-added all the music in, all the little stingers, the music cues that we get. And when he showed it to them again, they thought it was a completely different film because it was so scary. And it was all because of the music that he put in there. And another thing, the music in this film is actually credited to the Bowling Green Philharmonic, which actually doesn't exist. It's just a nod to Bowling Green, where John Carpenter went to school. So that's pretty much everything I wanted to say about Halloween. Again, I've talked about this film ad nauseum, and I'm probably going to continue to talk about it because I love it so much. I'm not sure where I go from here on Halloween, but that's all I wanted to say about it. It's still my favorite horror movie of all time. It is still my favorite slasher movie of all time, and it's always going to be my favorite Halloween movie of all time. I love Michael Myers. I love what John Carpenter did in this film. Everybody that worked on this film did a fantastic job, and when you can take something that was made for, I believe it was $320,000, which is pretty much nothing in the movie making world, and you can turn it into something that at the time was one of the most profitable movies ever made, that you know you're onto something special with that, and something special it is. Now, as far as where we go in this little mini-series next, I had a request to do Candyman, so I'm going to do that. That video will be coming soon. I've just got to find a little bit of time to carve out to do it. Another thing that's also coming very soon is I'm going to do not really a comparison, but just talking about some professional wrestlers who have their roots in horror villains, like how similar they can be, what characters lean heavily into the horror side in professional wrestling. So I think that's going to be a really fun video to do as well. So make sure you're staying tuned for all that. My name is Andrew Dreamer, and I will see you next time on Wrestling with Horror.